Waitress helps black boy at diner, then gasps when she discovers his true identity. Sarah Miller wiped down the counter of Joe's Diner for the 100th time that day, her blue eyes scanning the nearly empty restaurant. At 28, she had been working as a waitress for almost a decade, putting herself through community college and saving every penny she could. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, and her warm smile belied the exhaustion she felt after another long shift. Growing up in the small town of Millbrook, Sarah had always been known for her keen intuition and compassionate nature. Her single mother had raised her to be observant and kind, traits that served her well in her job. Over the years, she had become a confidant to many of the diner's regular customers, listening to their stories and offering a sympathetic ear. Despite the mundane nature of her job, Sarah found fulfillment in the small acts of kindness she could perform each day. Whether it was remembering a customer's usual order or offering a free refill to someone who looked like they were having a rough day, she believed that even the smallest gestures could make a difference in someone's life. Recently, Sarah had been feeling restless, sensing that there was something more she could be doing with her life. She had been taking online courses in social work, drawn to the idea of helping people on a larger scale. But for now, the diner was her stage, and she approached each shift with the same dedication and attention to detail. Joe's Diner sat on the outskirts of Millbrook, a popular stop for both locals and travelers passing through. Its retro decor and home-style cooking had remained largely unchanged for decades, providing a comforting constant in a rapidly changing world. Sarah knew every inch of the place, from the squeaky floorboard by the jukebox to the temperamental coffee maker that required a specific touch to function properly. As the afternoon sun streamed through the windows, casting long shadows across the checkered floor, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was different about this particular day. There was a charge in the air, an anticipation she couldn't quite explain. Little did she know that in just a few hours, her life would change forever, all because of a chance encounter with a young boy and her decision to trust her instincts. Sarah glanced at the clock, noting that the dinner rush would be starting soon. She took a deep breath, centered herself, and prepared to greet the evening's customers with her usual friendly demeanor. Unbeknownst to her, she was about to face a situation that would test her compassion, courage, and quick thinking in ways she never could have imagined. The dinner rush had just begun to taper off when the bell above the diner's door chimed, signaling the arrival of new customers. Sarah looked up from the table she was clearing to see a man and a young boy enter. Something about the pair immediately caught her attention. The man was tall and imposing, with a neatly trimmed beard and expensive-looking clothes that seemed out of place in the modest diner. His grip on the boy's shoulder appeared unnecessarily tight, his knuckles white against the child's dark skin. The boy, who couldn't have been more than 10 or 11, kept his eyes downcast, his small frame tense and rigid. Sarah approached them with her usual warm smile, though internally, she felt a flicker of unease. "Welcome to Joe's Diner," she said brightly. "Table for two?" The man nodded curtly, barely making eye contact. "Yes, somewhere private," he said, his voice low and gravelly. Sarah led them to a booth in the corner, away from the few remaining customers. As she handed them menus, she tried to catch the boy's eye, but he remained focused on the table in front of him. "Can I start you off with some drinks?" Sarah asked, her pen poised over her notepad. "Coffee, black," the man said, "and a water for the boy." Sarah nodded, then turned her attention to the child. "How about you, sweetie? Would you like some chocolate milk instead? Or maybe a milkshake?" Before the boy could respond, the man cut in sharply. "He'll have water. We're in a hurry." Sarah felt her smile falter slightly, but she maintained her professional demeanor. "Of course. I'll be right back with your drinks." As she walked away, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The boy's silence, the man's controlling behavior, it all set off alarm bells in her head. She'd seen all types come through the diner over the years, but this was different. This felt dangerous. While preparing their drinks, Sarah kept a watchful eye on the pair. The man was leaning across the table, speaking to the boy in hushed but clearly angry tones. The child seemed to shrink further into himself with each passing moment. When Sarah returned with their drinks, she deliberately placed the water in front of the boy, hoping to create an opportunity for interaction. "There you go, sweetie," she said gently. "Let me know if you need anything else, okay?" For the briefest moment, the boy's eyes flickered up to meet hers. In that instant, Sarah saw a world of fear and desperation in his gaze. It was a look she had never seen before, especially not on a child, and it made her heart lurch painfully in her chest. The man cleared his throat impatiently. "We're ready to order," he said, effectively dismissing Sarah's attempt to connect with the boy. As Sarah took their order, her mind was racing. Every instinct she possessed was screaming that this child was in danger. But what could she do? She had no proof, no concrete evidence that anything was amiss. For all she knew, this could be a father and son having a bad day. Making accusations without basis could cost her her job, or worse. But as she walked back to the kitchen to place their order, Sarah couldn't forget the look in the boy's eyes. It was a silent plea for help, as clear as if he had shouted it aloud. With shaking hands, Sarah approached her manager, Mike. "I think we might have a situation," she said in a low voice, explaining what she had observed. Mike frowned, glancing over at the table. "That's a serious accusation, Sarah. We can't just call the police because a kid looks upset. Maybe they're just having a rough day." Sarah felt frustration bubbling up inside her. "It's more than that, Mike. I can feel it. Something's really wrong." "Look," Mike said, his tone gentle but firm. "Keep an eye on them. If you see anything concrete, anything that clearly indicates the boy's in danger, then we'll call the authorities. But for now, just do your job, okay?" Sarah nodded reluctantly, knowing she couldn't push the issue further without risking her position. As she went to check on her other tables, she kept the man and boy in her peripheral vision, watching for any sign that might confirm her suspicions. The next 20 minutes passed in a haze of tension for Sarah. She went through the motions of her job, taking orders and refilling coffee cups, but her attention never strayed far from the corner booth. With each passing moment, her certainty that the boy was in danger grew stronger, as did her determination to do something about it. Little did Sarah know that her decision to trust her instincts and take action would set in motion a chain of events that would change multiple lives forever, and challenge her in ways she never could have anticipated. As Sarah approached the corner booth to deliver the man and boy's food, she steeled herself, determined to find some way to confirm her suspicions. She placed the plates on the table with practiced ease, her eyes darting between the man's impassive face and the boy's downcast gaze. "Is there anything else I can get for you?" she asked, her voice steady despite her racing heart. The man shook his head curtly, already reaching for his fork. But as Sarah turned to leave, she noticed something that made her blood run cold. The boy, in reaching for his glass of water, had shifted in his seat, causing his sleeve to ride up slightly. There, on his thin wrist, was a dark bruise in the unmistakable shape of finger marks. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. This was it, the concrete evidence she needed. She managed to nod and walk away calmly, but her mind was reeling. There was no innocent explanation for those bruises. The boy was being abused, and she was now certain that the man he was with was not his father or any kind of legitimate guardian. As she made her way back to the kitchen, Sarah's thoughts raced. She needed to act fast, but she also needed to be smart about this. If she spooked the man, he might flee with the boy, and who knew what would happen then? Sarah approached Mike again, her voice urgent. "Mike, I saw bruises on the boy's wrist, clear finger marks. We need to call the police now." Mike's eyes widened, his earlier skepticism evaporating. He nodded grimly. "Okay, go to my office and make the call. I'll keep an eye on them. Be discreet." With shaking hands, Sarah dialed 911. As she waited for the operator to answer, she peered through the small window in Mike's office door, keeping the corner booth in her line of sight. 911? What's your emergency? Came the calm voice on the other end of the line. Sarah took a deep breath. "I'm a waitress at Joe's Diner on Route 29. There's a man here with a young boy, and I have reason to believe the child is in danger. I've seen signs of physical abuse, and the boy seems terrified." The operator's voice remained steady as she asked Sarah for more details. Sarah described the man and boy, relayed her observations about their behavior, and mentioned the bruises she had seen. "All right, we're dispatching officers to your location now," the operator assured her. "In the meantime, do not confront the man or do anything to alert him. Just keep the boy in sight if you can." As Sarah hung up, she felt a mix of relief and apprehension. Help was on the way, but now came the hardest part: waiting while trying to act normal. She emerged from the office, catching Mike's eye and giving him a subtle nod. He understood. The police were coming. Now they just had to keep the man and boy there until they arrived. Sarah busied herself with her other tables, hyper-aware of every movement in the diner. She could see the man and boy still eating their meal, the man occasionally leaning in to whisper something to the child. The boy hadn't touched much of his food, pushing it around his plate listlessly. As the minutes ticked by, Sarah found herself stealing glances at the door, willing the police to arrive. She knew that every moment that passed was another moment the boy remained in danger. Finally, after what felt like hours but was really only about 15 minutes, Sarah saw a police cruiser pull into the parking lot. Her heart leapt into her throat. This was it. Whatever happened next would be out of her hands, but she knew she had done the right thing by trusting her instincts and making that call. As two officers entered the diner, their presence immediately commanding attention, Sarah sent up a silent prayer for the boy's safety. The revelation of those bruises had confirmed her worst fears, but it had also set in motion events that she hoped would lead to the child's rescue. Now, all she could do was watch and hope that her actions would make a difference in this young boy's life. As the police officers entered the diner, Sarah felt a surge of adrenaline course through her body. This was the moment of truth. She knew she had to act quickly to ensure the officers understood the situation without alerting the man in the corner booth. Making a split-second decision, Sarah approached the officers with a welcoming smile, as if they were regular customers. "Good evening, officers," she said cheerfully, loud enough for her voice to carry. "Table for two?" The officers, picking up on her cue, played along. "Yes, please," the taller of the two replied. Sarah led them to a table near the corner booth, positioning them so they had a clear view of the man and boy. As she handed them menus, she leaned in close, lowering her voice. "The man and boy in the corner booth," she whispered. "The boy has bruises. I think he's in danger." The officers nodded almost imperceptibly, their demeanor shifting subtly as they assessed the situation. Sarah moved away, her heart pounding, knowing that her decision to involve the police had set irreversible events in motion. What happened next unfolded in a blur. The officers stood, approaching the corner booth with measured steps. "Sir," one of them said, his voice calm but authoritative, "we need to speak with you and the boy." The man's head snapped up, his eyes narrowing as he took in the police uniforms. In a flash, he grabbed the boy's arm, yanking him out of the booth. "We were just leaving," he growled, trying to push past the officers. But the police were ready. One officer blocked the man's path while the other, gently but firmly, separated the boy from his grip. The man's face contorted with rage as he realized he was cornered. In a desperate move, he shoved the officer blocking him and made a break for the door. Sarah watched in horror as the man barreled towards her, his eyes wild with panic. Without thinking, she stuck out her foot, tripping him. The man went down hard, crashing into a table before sprawling on the floor. The officers were on him in an instant, restraining him as he thrashed and shouted. In the chaos that followed, Sarah's focus remained on the boy. He stood frozen, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and disbelief. Acting on instinct, Sarah approached him slowly, kneeling down to his level. "Hey there," she said softly. "You're safe now. No one's going to hurt you anymore." The boy's lower lip trembled, and suddenly he burst into tears, years of pent-up emotion pouring out. Without hesitation, Sarah enveloped him in a gentle hug, murmuring words of comfort as he sobbed into her shoulder. As the police led the handcuffed man away and called for backup, Sarah stayed with the boy, determined to be a source of stability in this tumultuous moment. She learned that his name was Jamal, and that the man who had brought him to the diner was not his father, but someone who had taken him from a park near his home months ago. The consequences of Sarah's decision to trust her instincts and call the police rippled out far beyond that evening at the diner. In the days that followed, the story broke in local and then national news. Jamal was reunited with his frantic parents, whose tearful embraces were captured on camera and shared across social media platforms. The man, it turned out, was a suspected child trafficker with ties to a larger criminal network. Sarah's actions had not only saved Jamal, but had also provided law enforcement with a crucial lead in breaking up a trafficking ring that had been operating across state lines. Sarah found herself thrust into the spotlight, hailed as a hero by the media and her community. She received commendations from the police department and was even invited to speak at a conference on recognizing and reporting signs of child abuse and trafficking. But with this newfound recognition came challenges Sarah hadn't anticipated. She received threatening messages from people connected to the trafficking ring, necessitating police protection. Some criticized her for profiling the man based on his race, accusing her of perpetuating harmful stereotypes. At work, things had changed too. Some customers came to the diner specifically to meet her, disrupting the usual flow of her shifts. Others seemed uncomfortable around her, as if her heightened awareness made them feel scrutinized. Despite these challenges, Sarah didn't regret her decision for a moment. Every time she saw Jamal's smiling face on the news, surrounded by his loving family, she knew she had done the right thing. Her actions had saved a child's life and had given her a new sense of purpose. As the media frenzy began to die down, Sarah found herself at a crossroads. Her experience had ignited a passion for child advocacy that she couldn't ignore. She began to seriously consider leaving her job at the diner to pursue her degree in social work full-time. The decision wasn't easy. The diner had been her life for so long, and the idea of leaving the familiar for the unknown was terrifying. But every time she hesitated, she thought of Jamal and the difference she had made in his life. She knew that she had the potential to help many more children if she dedicated herself to this path. As Sarah weighed her options, she realized that her decision to help Jamal had not only changed his life, but had irrevocably altered the course of her own. Whatever she decided, she knew that she would never again be content to simply stand by when she sensed someone was in trouble. She had discovered a strength within herself, that she never knew existed, and she was determined to use it to make a difference in the world. As Sarah grappled with her decision about her future, a secondary plot began to unfold in the small town of Millbrook. The incident at Joe's Diner had shone a spotlight on the issue of child trafficking, revealing that it wasn't just a big city problem, but one that could touch even the most seemingly idyllic communities. Mayor Thompson, a longtime Millbrook resident known for his conservative views, found himself under pressure to address the issue. Initially reluctant to acknowledge the problem, he was forced to take action when a group of concerned citizens, led by local schoolteacher Emily Rodriguez, began organizing town hall meetings to discuss child safety and community vigilance. Emily, a passionate advocate for children's rights, saw the incident with Jamal as a wake-up call for the community. She reached out to Sarah, hoping to enlist her help in raising awareness about the signs of child abuse and trafficking. "Your story has opened people's eyes," Emily told Sarah over coffee one afternoon. "We need to keep this momentum going to make sure nothing like this ever happens in our town again." Sarah, still adjusting to her newfound role as a local hero, was hesitant at first. She wasn't sure she was ready for more public attention. But as Emily shared her plans for education programs in schools and training sessions for local businesses, Sarah found herself drawn in by the teachers' enthusiasm and commitment. Meanwhile, the Millbrook Police Department was undergoing its own transformation. Chief Roberts, embarrassed that a waitress had spotted what his officers had missed, instituted mandatory training on recognizing signs of abuse and trafficking. He also established a new community outreach program, aiming to build better relationships between law enforcement and local residents. The ripple effects of Sarah's actions continued to spread. Local businesses, inspired by Joe's Diner's role in Jamal's rescue, began implementing their own protocols for identifying and reporting suspicious situations. The Millbrook Gazette ran a series of articles on child safety, featuring interviews with experts and survivors. Not everyone in town was supportive of these changes. Some older residents grumbled about the loss of innocence, arguing that increased vigilance was making people paranoid. Others complained that the focus on trafficking was distracting from other important issues facing the community. One vocal opponent was Harold Grimes, owner of the local hardware store and a longtime friend of Mayor Thompson. "This is all blown out of proportion," he argued at a town council meeting. "One incident doesn't mean we need to overhaul everything. We're scaring people for no reason." His words sparked a heated debate, with Emily and her supporters facing off against those who wanted to downplay the issue. The town found itself divided, with yard signs supporting either side popping up on lawns across Millbrook. Sarah watched these developments with a mixture of pride and concern. She was glad that her actions had sparked important conversations, but she worried about the growing tensions in the community she loved. As the debate raged on, Sarah realized that her decision about her future wasn't just about her anymore. It was tied to the larger questions facing Millbrook. How could they protect their children while maintaining their sense of community? How could they address difficult issues without tearing themselves apart? These questions weighed heavily on Sarah's mind as she continued to work at the diner, attend Emily's meetings, and ponder her next steps. She knew that whatever she decided would not only impact her life, but would also play a role in shaping the future of Millbrook. The secondary plot had added layers of complexity to Sarah's story, intertwining her personal journey with the broader changes happening in her community. As she navigated these choppy waters, Sarah found herself growing in ways she never expected, developing not just as an individual, but as a leader and advocate. As the events in Millbrook continued to unfold, Sarah found her relationships evolving in unexpected ways. Her connection with Jamal and his family deepened, moving beyond the initial rescue to a genuine friendship. Jamal's parents, grateful for Sarah's role in saving their son, often stopped by the diner to chat and update her on Jamal's progress in therapy. One quiet afternoon, Jamal's mother, Tanya, sat at the counter, cradling a cup of coffee. "You know," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "Jamal talks about you all the time. He says you're his guardian angel." Sarah felt a lump form in her throat. "I'm just glad I could help," she replied softly. "How is he doing?" Tanya's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "He has nightmares sometimes, but he's getting better. Your visit last week really cheered him up." "You have a way with him, Sarah." This growing bond with Jamal and his family gave Sarah's actions a personal face, reinforcing her desire to make a difference in children's lives. It also opened her eyes to the long-term effects of trauma and the importance of ongoing support for survivors. Sarah's relationship with her coworkers at Joe's Diner also shifted. Mike, the manager who had initially been skeptical of her concerns, became one of her strongest supporters. He took pride in how his employee had handled the situation and often bragged about her to customers. "That's our Sarah," he'd say, beaming like a proud father. "Always looking out for others. We're lucky to have her." Other coworkers, however, seemed uncomfortable around her. Some, like veteran waitress Doris, felt that Sarah's actions had disrupted the peaceful routine of the diner. "It's all anyone ever talks about now," Doris complained one day. "Whatever happened to just serving food and minding our own business?" Sarah struggled with these strained relationships, torn between her newfound purpose and her loyalty to the diner family she'd been a part of for so long. Her budding friendship with Emily Rodriguez added another dimension to Sarah's evolving social circle. The two women, despite their different backgrounds, found common ground in their passion for protecting children. They spent hours discussing ideas for community programs and educational initiatives. During one such conversation, Emily looked at Sarah thoughtfully. "You know, you have a real gift for this work. Have you ever considered going into social services full-time?" The question hit close to Sarah's ongoing internal debate about her future. "I've been thinking about it," she admitted, "but I'm not sure I'm qualified." Emily's eyes lit up. "Are you kidding? After what you did for Jamal? Sarah, you have instincts that can't be taught. Everything else, you can learn." This vote of confidence from someone she admired gave Sarah a boost of self-assurance she hadn't realized she needed. Perhaps the most complex relationship development was with Mayor Thompson. Initially dismissive of Sarah's concerns, he found himself reluctantly admiring her determination as the issue gained traction in Millbrook. He began to seek her input on community safety initiatives, recognizing the value of her perspective. During one meeting at City Hall, the mayor pulled Sarah aside. "I misjudged you," he said gruffly. "Thought you were just causing a fuss, but I see now that you genuinely care about this town and its people. We need more folks like you involved in local government." Sarah was taken aback by this unexpected praise. It made her realize that change was possible, even in the most unlikely places, if people were willing to open their minds and listen to each other. As these relationships evolved, Sarah found herself at the center of a growing network of individuals committed to making Millbrook a safer place for children. Each interaction, each conversation, each shared moment of frustration or triumph helped to shape her understanding of the complexities involved in community advocacy. She began to see how change happened not just through grand gestures, but through the slow, steady work of building connections and finding common ground. The waitress who had once felt invisible now found herself an integral part of her community's fabric, her actions and words carrying weight she never imagined they could. These deepening relationships also forced Sarah to confront her own biases and assumptions. She learned to listen more, to seek understanding before judgment, and to recognize the value of diverse perspectives in addressing complex social issues. As she navigated these changing dynamics, Sarah felt herself growing not just as an advocate, but as a person. The shy, unassuming waitress was blossoming into a confident, empathetic leader, ready to take on whatever challenges lay ahead. The tensions that had been building in Millbrook over the past months finally came to a head on a crisp autumn evening. The town council had convened a special meeting to vote on a series of proposed measures aimed at child safety and community awareness. The high school auditorium, serving as the venue for this crucial gathering, was packed to capacity. Sarah sat in the front row, her heart racing with a mixture of anticipation and nervousness. Beside her, Emily squeezed her hand reassuringly. They had worked tirelessly on these proposals, and now it all came down to this vote. Emily's eyes lit up. "Are you kidding? After what you did for Jamal? Sarah, you have instincts that can't be taught. Everything else, you can learn." This vote of confidence from someone she admired gave Sarah a boost of self-assurance she hadn't realized she needed. Perhaps the most complex relationship development was with Mayor Thompson. Initially dismissive of Sarah's concerns, he found himself reluctantly admiring her determination as the issue gained traction in Millbrook. He began to seek her input on community safety initiatives, recognizing the value of her perspective. During one meeting at City Hall, the mayor pulled Sarah aside. "I misjudged you," he said gruffly. "Thought you were just causing a fuss. But I see now that you genuinely care about this town and its people. We need more folks like you involved in local government." Sarah was taken aback by this unexpected praise. It made her realize that change was possible, even in the most unlikely places, if people were willing to open their minds and listen to each other. As these relationships evolved, Sarah found herself at the center of a growing network of individuals committed to making Millbrook a safer place for children. Each interaction, each conversation, each shared moment of frustration or triumph helped to shape her understanding of the complexities involved in community advocacy. She began to see how change happened, not just through grand gestures, but through the slow, steady work of building connections and finding common ground. The waitress who had once felt invisible now found herself an integral part of her community's fabric, her actions and words carrying weight she never imagined they could. These deepening relationships also forced Sarah to confront her own biases and assumptions. She learned to listen more, to seek understanding before judgment, and to recognize the value of diverse perspectives in addressing complex social issues. As she navigated these changing dynamics, Sarah felt herself growing not just as an advocate, but as a person. The shy, unassuming waitress was blossoming into a confident, empathetic leader, ready to take on whatever challenges lay ahead. The tensions that had been building in Millbrook over the past months finally came to a head on a crisp autumn evening. The town council had convened a special meeting to vote on a series of proposed measures aimed at child safety and community awareness. The high school auditorium, serving as the venue for this crucial gathering, was packed to capacity. Sarah sat in the front row, her heart racing with a mixture of anticipation and nervousness. Beside her, Emily squeezed her hand reassuringly. They had worked tirelessly on these proposals, and now it all came down to this vote. Mayor Thompson called the meeting to order, his voice echoing through the packed auditorium. "Tonight," he began, "we face a decision that will shape the future of our town. The measures before us are not just about one incident, but about who we want to be as a community." As the mayor outlined the proposed changes, including mandatory training for all public employees, a new community watch program, and increased funding for child protective services, Sarah could feel the tension in the room ratcheting up. When the floor opened for public comments, Harold Grimes was the first to the microphone. "This is nothing but fear-mongering," he declared, his face red with anger. "We're letting one isolated incident change everything about our way of life. Millbrook has always been safe, and we don't need all these new rules and programs." A murmur of agreement rose from one section of the audience, while others shook their heads in disagreement. The line of speakers that followed seemed evenly split, with passionate arguments made on both sides. Finally, it was Sarah's turn to speak. As she approached the microphone, she felt all eyes on her. Taking a deep breath, she began to share her story. Not just of the night she helped Jamal, but of all the moments leading up to it. She spoke of the subtle signs she'd learned to recognize, the importance of trusting one's instincts, and the difference that one person's actions could make. "I'm not standing here as a hero," she concluded, her voice steady despite her nerves. "I'm here as a member of this community who believes that we have a responsibility to protect our most vulnerable. These measures aren't about living in fear. They're about being prepared and aware. Because the truth is, if it could happen here, it could happen anywhere." A hush fell over the auditorium as Sarah returned to her seat. Even those who had been opposed to the measures seemed moved by her words. As the council prepared to vote, tension in the room reached a fever pitch. Sarah held her breath as each council member cast their vote. It all came down to the final vote, cast by a councilwoman who had been undecided throughout the debate. After much consideration, the councilwoman said, her voice ringing out in the silent auditorium, "I vote yes. These measures may not be perfect, but they're a step in the right direction. We owe it to our children to do everything we can to keep them safe." The auditorium erupted into a mixture of cheers and angry shouts. The measures had passed, but by the narrowest of margins. As Mayor Thompson called for order, Sarah felt a wave of emotion wash over her. They had won, but the close vote showed just how divided the town remained. As people began to file out of the auditorium, some celebrating, others grumbling about the outcome, Sarah knew that this was more than just a victory for child safety measures. It was a turning point for Millbrook and for her own life. The climactic town council vote had brought all the simmering tensions to the surface. Now, in its wake, Sarah and the entire town of Millbrook would have to navigate the choppy waters of change, working to heal divisions and build a stronger, safer community for all. In the days following the town council vote, Millbrook found itself grappling with the aftermath of the decision. The narrow margin of victory had left the town sharply divided, with tensions running high on both sides of the issue. Sarah, thrust into the center of this ongoing conflict, knew that passing the measures was only the first step. The real challenge lay in implementing them in a way that could bring the community together, rather than drive it further apart. Determined to bridge the divide, Sarah reached out to Mayor Thompson with an idea. "What if we formed a community task force?" she suggested during a meeting in his office. "We could bring together people from both sides of the debate to oversee the implementation of the new measures. It would give everyone a voice in the process." The mayor, initially skeptical, warmed to the idea as Sarah outlined her vision. "It could help ease some of the tension," he mused, "and it would show that we're committed to making this work for everyone." With the mayor's backing, Sarah set about assembling the task force. She was determined to include a diverse range of voices, from staunch supporters of the measures to some of their most vocal critics. It wasn't an easy process. Many on both sides were reluctant to work with those they viewed as opponents. Harold Grimes, still bitter about the outcome of the vote, initially refused to participate. "Why should I help implement something I don't agree with?" he demanded when Sarah approached him. "Because your voice matters," Sarah replied, meeting his anger with calm determination. "If you're not part of the process, you can't influence how these measures are put into practice. This is your chance to make sure your concerns are heard." Slowly, through countless conversations and negotiations, Sarah managed to bring together a group that represented the full spectrum of opinions in Millbrook. The first meeting of the task force was tense, with participants eyeing each other warily across the table. But as they began to discuss the practicalities of implementing the new safety measures, something unexpected happened. People who had been at odds found common ground in their desire to protect the town's children, even if they disagreed on the methods. One particularly powerful moment came when Jamal's parents were invited to speak to the task force. As they shared their story, the agony of their son's disappearance, the joy of his return, and the ongoing challenges of helping him heal, the room fell silent. Even the most hardened critics of the new measures seemed moved by the personal testament to the reality of child trafficking. "I never thought it could happen here," Harold Grimes said quietly after the parents had finished speaking. Maybe we do need to be more vigilant." It wasn't an overnight transformation, but slowly, meeting by meeting, the task force began to make progress. They worked to refine the implementation plans, finding compromises that address the concerns of critics while maintaining the integrity of the safety measures. Sarah found herself working long hours, balancing her shifts at the diner with her commitments to the task force and her ongoing advocacy work. It was exhausting, but every small victory, every mind opened to a new perspective, made it worthwhile. One of the task force's key initiatives was a series of community education workshops. Sarah, drawing on her experience and the knowledge she'd gained through her social work studies, helped design a curriculum that taught people how to recognize signs of abuse and trafficking without promoting paranoia or suspicion. The workshops were initially met with mixed reactions. Some embraced the opportunity to learn, while others viewed them as an imposition. But as word spread about the practical, balanced nature of the training, attendance grew. A breakthrough came when local business owners, led by the example of Joe's Diner, began to see the value in the training for their employees. "It's not just about stopping crime," Mike told a group of fellow business owners. "It's about creating a community where everyone looks out for each other. That's good for all of us." As the months passed, the task force's work began to bear fruit. The new safety measures were implemented gradually, with ongoing input and adjustments based on community feedback. A new spirit of collaboration emerged, with people who had once been on opposite sides of the debate now working together to fine-tune the programs. Sarah, watching this transformation unfold, felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The path to resolution had been far from smooth, and there were still pockets of resistance in the community. But the willingness of people to come together, to listen to each other, and work towards a common goal gave her hope. One evening, as the task force wrapped up a particularly productive meeting, Mayor Thompson pulled Sarah aside. "You know," he said, a note of admiration in his voice, "when you first proposed this task force, I thought you were being naive, but you've managed to bring this town together in a way I never thought possible. You should be proud." Sarah smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. The conflict was far from fully resolved. She knew there would always be disagreements and challenges ahead. But they had made real progress, not just in implementing the safety measures, but in building a stronger, more united community. As she left the meeting, Sarah reflected on how far they had come. The journey from that fateful night in the diner to this moment had been long and often difficult. But it had also been transformative, not just for her, but for the entire town of Millbrook. They were learning, together, how to face difficult issues, how to bridge divides, and how to create meaningful change. They were learning together how to face difficult issues, how to bridge divides, and how to create meaningful change. The success of the Community Task Force marked a significant turning point, not just for Millbrook, but for Sarah herself. As she watched the town come together, overcoming differences and working towards a common goal, Sarah realized that her own journey had brought her to a crossroads. One evening, as she wiped down tables after closing at Joe's Diner, Sarah found herself in deep conversation with Mike. "You know," he said, leaning against the counter, "you've outgrown this place, Sarah. Don't get me wrong, you're the best waitress I've ever had. But you're meant for bigger things." Sarah paused, feeling a mix of emotions wash over her. "This diner has been my life for so long," she said softly. "I'm not sure I know how to be anything else." Mike smiled kindly. "That's not true, and you know it. Look at everything you've accomplished in the past few months. You've changed this town, Sarah, and I think it's time for you to take the next step." His words echoed the thoughts that had been swirling in Sarah's mind for weeks. Her work with the task force, her advocacy for child safety, and her ongoing social work studies had ignited a passion she couldn't ignore. She knew she had found her calling, but taking the leap into a new career felt daunting. The next day, Sarah received an unexpected call from a state-level child advocacy organization. They had heard about her work in Millbrook and were impressed by her dedication and natural aptitude for community organizing. They offered her a position as a program coordinator, working to implement child safety initiatives across the state. It was an incredible opportunity, one that would allow Sarah to make a difference on a larger scale. But it would also mean leaving Millbrook, the only home she'd ever known. As she considered the offer, Sarah realized that this was more than just a career decision. It was a chance to fully step into the person she had become through her experiences. The shy, unassuming waitress who had once been content to blend into the background was gone. In her place stood a confident, passionate advocate ready to take on new challenges. After days of soul-searching and discussions with her loved ones, Sarah made her decision. She would accept the position, taking the skills and experiences she had gained in Millbrook to help other communities across the state. It was a bittersweet moment as Sarah shared her decision with her friends and coworkers. There were tears and hugs, but also an overwhelming sense of pride and support. They knew, as Sarah did, that this was the right next step on her journey. As Sarah began to prepare for this new chapter in her life, she felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She was stepping into the unknown, but she was doing so with a sense of purpose and the knowledge that she had the power to make a real difference in the world. As Sarah packed up her small apartment, sorting through years of accumulated memories, she found herself reflecting on the incredible journey of the past few months. The woman she saw in the mirror now was almost unrecognizable from the timid waitress who had started that fateful shift at Joe's Diner. She thought back to the moment she had first noticed Jamal's silent plea for help. At the time, she had acted on instinct, trusting her gut feeling, despite her fears and doubts. Now, she realized that moment had been the catalyst for a profound transformation, not just in her life, but in her entire sense of self. Sarah had discovered a well of strength and courage within herself that she never knew existed. She had stood up to authority, faced down threats, and become a voice for those who couldn't speak for themselves. The shy girl who once shrank from confrontation had become a forceful advocate, unafraid to challenge the status quo. But it wasn't just her confidence that had grown. Sarah's understanding of the world and its complexities had expanded tremendously. She had learned about the intricacies of community organizing, the challenges of implementing policy changes, and the delicate balance required to bring people with differing viewpoints together. Her empathy, always one of her strongest traits, had deepened and matured. Through her work with Jamal and other survivors, she had gained a profound understanding of trauma and resilience. She had learned to listen not just with her ears, but with her heart, to hear the unspoken pain and fear behind people's words and actions. As she carefully wrapped the framed commendation she had received from the police department, Sarah thought about how her relationship with authority had evolved. Once intimidated by figures like Mayor Thompson and Chief Roberts, she now saw them as partners in her mission to protect children. She had learned to navigate the world of local politics and law enforcement, holding her own in discussions and debates. Her decision to leave Millbrook for a larger role in child advocacy felt like the culmination of this growth. It was a leap into the unknown, but Sarah no longer feared the uncertainty. She had learned to trust herself, to believe in her abilities, and to embrace new challenges as opportunities for further growth. As she taped up the last box, Sarah's eyes fell on a photograph of herself with the diner staff, taken just after Jamal's rescue. Her smile in the picture was tentative, almost surprised, as if she couldn't quite believe what she had done. Sarah smiled at her past self, feeling a wave of affection and pride for the woman who had taken that first crucial step. She thought of all the people who had been part of her journey. Mike, who had believed in her even when she doubted herself. Emily, who had shown her the power of passionate advocacy. Jamal and his family, who had given her actions meaning and purpose, and countless others who had supported, challenged, and inspired her along the way. Sarah realized that while she had grown and changed tremendously, she hadn't done it alone. Her journey had been shaped by the connections she had formed, the community she had become a part of, and the causes she had championed. As she picked up the last box, taking a final look around her now empty apartment, Sarah felt a profound sense of gratitude. Grateful for the experiences that had shaped her, for the people who had believed in her, and for the inner strength she had discovered. She was leaving Millbrook, but she was taking with her the most important lessons she had learned. The power of compassion, the importance of standing up for what's right, and the knowledge that one person, acting with courage and conviction, could set in motion changes that rippled out far beyond themselves. Sarah closed the door on her old life, ready to step into the new chapter that awaited her. She was no longer just a waitress who had helped a child in need. She was an advocate, a leader, and a beacon of hope for vulnerable children everywhere. And she was just getting started. As Sarah's car pulled away from Millbrook, the town fading in her rearview mirror, she felt a mix of emotions wash over her. Sadness at leaving the only home she'd ever known, excitement for the new adventures ahead, and a deep sense of accomplishment for all she had achieved. The past few months had been a testament to the power of individual action. Sarah's simple decision to trust her instincts and help a child in need had set off a chain reaction, transforming not just her own life, but the entire community of Millbrook. Her journey reinforced the idea that ordinary people are capable of extraordinary things when they have the courage to act on their convictions. It showed that real change often starts small, with one person willing to stand up, speak out, and make a difference. The story of Millbrook's transformation highlighted the importance of community and cooperation in addressing complex social issues. It demonstrated that even in the face of division and conflict, common ground can be found when people are willing to listen to each other and work together towards a shared goal. As Sarah embarked on her new role, she carried with her the lessons learned in Millbrook. The importance of trusting one's instincts, the power of perseverance in the face of adversity, and the transformative potential of compassion and understanding. Her story served as a reminder that heroes don't always wear capes or carry badges. Sometimes they wear aprons and carry coffee pots. And sometimes the most profound changes start with the simplest acts of kindness and courage. As Millbrook disappeared from view, Sarah looked ahead to the open road before her, ready to continue her journey of growth, advocacy, and positive change. She knew that wherever her path led, she would always carry with her the spirit of the small-town waitress who dared to make a difference.